Hello and welcome to this course. This course is designed for persons that have little or no knowledge of Dutch. We start from zero. You only need a pen, a paper, and, well, access to this course to start learning Dutch. One important remark, the spoken language here is Flemish, so that's the Dutch that is spoken in Belgium. Written Dutch is the same in the Netherlands as in Belgium, so you won't have any problem with that. But the spoken Dutch in the Netherlands is different from the Flemish, the Belgian Dutch. Not so much, but still. The course is divided into different sections. Each section has a particular topic, so we're going to see one topic per section. In the next lecture, you will find a link to an ebook in which you will find exercises, the vocabulary, and as well a summary of what is being taught in the course. So that will really help you to keep it close to you when you're seeing this course. If you have any technical questions, please visit this website so they will help you there. For example, if your video isn't playing well or if the audio isn't good or, well, any other technical question, please visit them and let's start learning Dutch. Welcome to this section. In this section we're going to see the alphabet first, then some other sounds, and then we're going to make some pronunciation exercises, and at the end there will be a quiz, so you'll have to pay a lot of attention. So, well, let's start. En nu in het Nederlands. Whoa, what was that? Well, these were your first words you heard in Dutch. They're written down there on the board behind me. En nu in het Nederlands. En means and. Nu means now. In means, big surprise, in. And het Nederlands is Dutch. So together, I'm sure you figured it out. And now in Dutch. Het Nederlands. There's an article in front of Nederlands. Nederlands means Dutch. And so het is an article in front of the language. Don't panic. All the words will be pronounced in the pronunciation exercise in 2 lectures. So we'll see all those words back. We gaan nu het alfabet zien. Whoa, it's another series of words. And they're again there. We means we. Gaan is the infinitive. And the infinitive in Dutch is also always the plural form of the verb. And gaan means to go. So gaan is both the conjugation of we and the infinitive. Nu, you know that already. Het alfabet. Het, you know that's the article. Alphabet. However, you see that alphabet is written differently from English. The PH changed into an F, and that happens normally in Dutch. So if you're reading a text and you see, for example, a photographer, and you see an F instead of a PH, that's normal. Happens a lot in Dutch. And zien is to see. Now we're going to see all the letters that are pronounced differently in the alphabet from the English ones. And let's start with the vowels. As a general rule for the vowels, there's the single letter and there's a double letter. The double letter has a long sound, as you see, for example, a and a. A, that's a long sound, and a is a short sound. However, sometimes the single letter will take the long sound. So it will be a instead of a. Let's see 2 examples. Alphabet, you hear it, twice short. And it's written single as well. And gaan, as we've seen already, that's the long pronunciation. Next one is and e. Again, short, e long. So e double e. Can be both short and long. And we see it in het Nederlands. There's 2 sounds there, e and and however, there's only always one e. There's also another pronunciation of the e, and that's the e in het alphabet. Next one is a little bit of a complicated, because the I, when it's doubled, it takes an e at the end. So again, short sound I as in in, and I, the long I, as in zien. Another one, O and O, same pattern again. For example, op means on, and you can use it in a combination with tijd, on time, because tijd means time. So you know now, op tijd means on time. So if your teacher says to come on time, then you say op tijd. Tijd is as well with the article de. It's de tijd, and that's the second article, a definite article. So that's to translate die. So either it's het or de. De is for the masculine and the feminine, and het is for the asexual nouns. We'll see more about that later. However, remember that it's de or het. And the last vowel is e or u, as in nu, now. It's a long pronunciation. And here I put a tricky one here. Nederlands, it's pronounced as an U, the second E. So and that's to show you that when you hear a letter, it might not be the letter that you think. So that's Nederlands. There's no E there, but there's an E there, although it's pronounced as an E. Let's see some consonants now. The C, as in het circus, has both pronunciations, so it's a S or a K sound. Het circus, that's the circus. The Ch, that's a very typical Dutch letter. It's the same as in German. In German, it's written with CH. For example, in machen, so that's a German word, don't study that one, but it's the same pronunciation. So, from gaan, it's very important when you pronounce that letter that you push the sound out of your mouth. So when you're saying g of great, for example, then you don't really put sound out of your mouth, but then the air has to move out of your mouth, as in gaan. Next letter is j, that's the G. However, it's always pronounced j. For example, in ja, yes, and young, young. The r, that's quite a difficult letter to pronounce for English speaking persons, because in English the R, circus, you almost don't hear it. However, in Dutch it's very important that you hear the r. It has to come from inside of your mouth, actually from your throat. And when you say the r, you really have to be able to feel that it moves here. R. And as well, it comes from the back of your tongue. So you have to put your tongue up at the back instead of down in front. When you're saying the r, you put your tongue down in front. And instead of that, you have to put the tongue in your back up to pronounce the r, as in het circus. Last one is the Y. It's pronounced as in the baby, as an I, and the yogurt. That's yogurt and baby, of course. So it's Y or I. Now we've seen all the letters that are different from English. I'm going to read the alphabet just for you to hear it as an exercise. Listen to the letters of your own name, both your first name and your given name, so that you can spell your name when you need it in Dutch. So here we go. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Let's see some other sounds now, and let's start with the first one. This is O and O. It's written twice there, once with an O and once with an A. It's the same as loud, as in English, except that at the end you don't have to pronounce the W sound. It's loud. Instead of that, it's low, and it's pronounced a little bit different, as in oud, meaning old, and de auto, that's the car. Next one is Ö. Again, if you know German, it's the same as in Keulen, that's the name of a city. and in Dutch it's used like this, it's EU, it's leuk, and that's nice or fun. Next letter is pronounced like I, and it can be written with IJ and with EI. For example, tijd, we've already seen, that's time. OI is pronounced OE, as in who, meaning how, and well, if you put them together, that means oehoe, and that's the name of an owl in Dutch, because an owl makes a sound oehoe. So you can forget that, that's not so important, but some words in Dutch are just composed of the sound of that animal makes, so that's a thing nice to know. Next one, UI, is as in uit. Uit means out or outside of. It's important to know that all letters are pronounced in Dutch, so when you're having a dictation you have to write each letter. In English it's not always pronounced. For example, if you say water, some people don't pronounce the T and the R barely, so it's water. In Dutch, no way, you have to say het water and the strong R, I hope you've been practicing already. Remember that we've already seen a few words and we can construct our first sentences, and let's make an exercise. Try to translate the sentences that are on the board there and hit the pause button because I'm going to translate them in a second. The first sentence is we zijn op tijd, means we are on time. The second sentence is nee, uit het water, nu. So I'll read it a bit slower. Nee, uit het water, nu, means no, out of the water, now. For example, if your children are playing in a pool and it's getting too dangerous or whatever, or the dog jumps into the swimming pool and you have to get them out, if they understand Dutch, then you can say nee, uit het water, nu. So you can already say that now. Very good of you. The next one is we zien de baby in de auto. So we zien de baby in de auto. We see the baby in the car. And the last one is hoe gaan we de oude auto zien? So that's hoe gaan we de oude auto zien? So that's a question. How are we going to see the old car? I put these sentences there just to make you write a sentence a day. That's a really good practice to learn Dutch, because Dutch is quite easy to put together if you already know English. If you just put the words together, usually they fit and people can already understand you. So it's very important to practice your Dutch and to write a sentence a day using words you already know, or maybe words that you'll still have to look up in the dictionary. So now we can pronounce all the words in Dutch. Congratulations. So both the alphabet, we can spell our own name, and we can pronounce all the difficult letters that are put together. So the letters like A and E and U and So let's do some exercises on that. Now we're going to see all the vocabulary we've seen in this section. The words will appear on the board and you'll have 5 seconds to pronounce them, after which I'll pronounce them with the translation as well. In attachment there's also an MP3 file for you to download with only the Dutch pronunciation without the translations. So let's start. An means aunt. Nu means now. In means in or inside. Het Nederlands means Dutch. We means we. Gaan means to go. Het alfabet means the alphabet. Zien is to see. Het circus is the circus. Nee means no. Ja means yes. Jong means young. Op means on. De tijd means time, the time. The baby means baby. You can't use it as a pet name for your boyfriend or your girlfriend. So it's just for little children, very small children. The yoghurt is yogurt. Oud means old. De auto means car. Leuk means nice, funny. Zijn means to be. Hoe is how. Uit is out, out of. And het water is water. In this section, we're going to see the pronouns, we're going to see the verb to be, then we're going to do some vocabulary exercises, and then some extra exercises, and then a quiz. So, let's see some Dutch now. In deze les gaan we het werkwoord zijn zien, en ook de persoonlijke voornaamwoorden. Erna doen we oefeningen. Whoa, what was that all about? Well, let's break it down. So the first sentence I said is, in deze les gaan we het werkwoord zijn zien. In, deze means this, les is lesson, so that's a little bit shorter than in English. Gaan we, that you know already. Het werkwoord is the verb, but don't remember that one, it's not so important. However, do remember that you can split that verb up into two parts. Het werk and het woord. Het werk means work, job, and het woord means the word. It happens very often in Dutch that words are constructed from two or maybe even three different words, and they're all put together, and then if you can make sense out of it, usually it makes sense. For example, werkwoord, it's a word that works. Which are the words that work? Well, these are the verbs, because they show action. And so you can deduct from the translation that it's a verb. Zijn means to be, the verb to be. Next sentence, en ook de persoonlijke voornaamwoorden, and also the personal pronouns, ook means also. Persoonlijke voornaamwoorden, I just put it there because it's the translation of pronouns, but don't remember that's a really difficult words. Next sentence, erna doen we oefeningen. Erna, again, that's a combination of two words that are put together. Means there, and na means after. Is in the sense of there is someone there, not there, or look there. That's not how is translated. It's to show the impersonal there. So there are people there. So the first one then would be and the second one wouldn't be Na means after, and together erna means thereafter. So after having seen the personal pronouns and the verbs, we're going to do exercises. Doen is the verb to do, similar to English, and exercises is oefeningen. Good, after all that Dutch, let's see the personal pronouns now. So, ik is I, jij or je is you, u is you, hij means he, zij or ze means she, wij or we means we, jullie means you, and zij or ze means they. Take a moment to look at this, at these personal pronouns, and try to notice what's difficult, what's not difficult. I'll give you a little second to think about it and to see these personal pronouns. Study them well; they're very important in the Dutch language. So, 4 remarks to make about these personal pronouns. First remark is that you is translated in 3 different ways, and that's a lot of ways. It's first translated as u, second as jij, je, and third as jullie. U is used for the politeness form. So, for example, your professor, your boss, persons you don't know, then you use u. Jij, je means that you know the person, it's an informal conversation, and that, well, it says for your family, for your close friends, and jullie is for more than one friend or member of the family. Second remark, u is conjugated in the third person in Dutch, so just like hij, zij, or het. That's different from English, because in English you say you are and not you is, like he is, but in Dutch it's like that. You can remember it by thinking about if you would talk to someone very important, like the Queen. You wouldn't say, ha, you are there. No, you would say, ah, the Queen is there. So that's a little bit the third person. You can remember that. Another thing, zij and ze are used for she and for they, so that's normal. You can only see it from the conjugation, what is really meant, if it's she or they. Another sentence in Dutch, jij. Jij en je betekenen hetzelfde, en ook wij en we, en zij en ze. Betekenen means to mean, hetzelfde means the same. So, wij and we, you can use them interchangeably, jij and je as well, and zij and ze as well. There's no rule there, whether you should use zij or ze. Betekenen hetzelfde, however, a little word about hetzelfde. Hetzelfde is used always with betekenen. However, if it's put in front of a noun, then it takes the article. If it's het, it's hetzelfde. If it's de, it's dezelfde. For example, het circus, you would say hetzelfde circus, but if you say it in the plural, then the het changes it to de, and that's a big rule there for nouns. Then you would say dezelfde circussen. So that's the plural, so then there you use dezelfde circussen. That's quite important. Good, now that you know everything about the personal pronouns, let's take a look at the verb to be. To be in Dutch. How do you say to be in Dutch? Well, let's see the conjugation. Ik ben, jij or u bent, hij is, zij is, het is, wij zijn, jullie zijn, en zij or ze zijn. What does strike you in this conjugation? Well, first of all, the u, we've just seen, it takes a conjugation of the third person, but to be is an exception, and u moves from the third person to the second person, moves from hij, zij, het to jij or je. That's one exception. Another thing that is very important, we've already seen it, that the plural has only one form, just as in English. You say we are, you are, they are in the plural, and that's the same as in Dutch, and it's the same as the infinitive. So that will help you already with the plural, the conjugation of the plural. And that goes so for all the verbs. Another thing that also goes for all the verbs, and that is maybe quite challenging actually, the jij, je form, and not with the u form. If jij, je is in front of the verb, jij bent leuk, then it takes a T, just like we've just seen. However, if the jij, je is behind the verb, comes after the verb, then it loses the T, and it's ben jij leuk? Are you funny? That's a question. I hope you are funny. But remember about the funny thing, that's not funny at all. Jij bent and ben jij. That goes so for all the verbs, so there you already have a rule for conjugating the verbs in the jij, je form. Let's do some exercises. The exercises are in the next lecture. You will find the solutions back in the ebook that is added to this course, so you can find all the solutions and all the exercises there, except for the quizzes, because those are on this platform, so you can't escape, you can't cheat there to find the solutions. So prepare well those exercises. There's the pronunciation exercise, of course, first, and then there will be the quiz. So good luck with the quiz. So let's see the vocabulary for this section. Again, 5 seconds to pronounce them well, hit the pause button if you need it, and here we go. Deze means this or these. De les means lesson. Na means after. Het werk means work or job. Het woord means word. Doen is the verb to do. Ook means also. Means there, as in the sense of there is or there are. De oefening means exercise. Ik means I. Jij or je means you in a formal way. U means you in a formal way. Hij means he. Het means it, but it's also used as an article, the, and the other article is de. Wij, we is we. Jullie is you in the plural. Zij, ze is they or she. Betekenen means to mean. Hetzelfde, dezelfde. Hetzelfde is for the same in a general sense, with the verb, for example, betekenen. And with het words, if it stands with a word het, then it's hetzelfde. And if it's a word that is with de, then it's dezelfde. Hi, in this section, we're going to see how to say hi in the first lecture. In the second lecture, we're going to be able to exchange our name. We're going to practice that. And how to say bye. Then we're going to do some pronunciation exercises and then some exercises to practice everything. Afterwards, we'll take a quiz. Zo, goed. In deze lessenreeks gaan we leren hallo zeggen en nog veel meer. We eindigen met oefeningen. Wow. So, let's break that up. Goed, in deze lessenreeks gaan we leren hallo zeggen. Goed means good, so that's good. In deze lessenreeks, reeks is a row, so lessenreeks, you know les is a lesson, and it's in the plural, so a row of lessons, that's a series of lessons. Leren, that's to learn. Hallo is hi, so we've already learned how to say hi. And zeggen is to say. En nog veel meer. Nog here is translated as even. Yeah. Veel is a lot, and meer is more. So you can translate this sentence as and even much more. Then we eindigen met oefeningen. Eindigen, you see the first 4 letters are and that resembles a lot to end. And that's what this verb means. Eindigen is to end. Met is with. So to read the whole sentence again. Goed, in deze lessenreeks gaan we leren hallo zeggen en nog veel meer. We eindigen met oefeningen. So that's translated. Good. In this series of lectures, we're going to learn how to say hello and even much more. We're ending with exercises. Goed. Now we're going to learn how to say hi. That's 2 ways there. Hallo, we've just seen, and dag. That's neutral ways how to say hi. You can also add a name after hallo and dag. You can say hallo Pieter or dag Jan to say hi. So that's allowed. There's a lot of youngsters that use more different ways to say hi, like hi or hey or hoi or any other way. So it's very important that when someone is speaking to you, that you listen to how that person greets you, and then you'll learn a little bit more how to say hi. Another way in English is to say good morning and so on. So let's put these on the board here. That's goedemorgen, goedemiddag, goedenamiddag, goedenavond, and goedenacht. Goedenacht, that's more to say bye. But goedemorgen, goedemiddag, and so on, you recognize there the goed, that's, as we've just seen, good. So let's put them aside. And what do you have there? Morgen, that's morning, to say good morning. But it also means tomorrow. So de morgen is the morning, and morgen means tomorrow. In this combination, it's the morning. De morgen, by the way, is also a Flemish newspaper. If you have the time to read a little bit, that they have a decent website to get news from Flanders. So goedemorgen, goedemiddag. Middag, that's noon, and that's something specific for Dutch, because in English we don't say good noon. It just sounds a little bit weird. But in Flanders or in the Netherlands, when it's around noon, you say good noon, goedemiddag. Goedenamiddag, you remember na means after, so that's good afternoon. And remember what we've seen earlier, that in Dutch there's a lot of combinations of words, and here's a nice combination. Goed na middag means good afternoon. So that's very easy to learn these combinations. Avond, that's evening. Mind, however, that it's goedenavond there. You see there's an N appearing because otherwise it would be goedenavond, and that's not, that's quite difficult to pronounce. Well, not that difficult, but for pronunciation reasons there's an N, but there goedenavond. And then goedenacht, that's nacht is night. Two more remarks about saying hi. In Dutch, people usually say goeiemorgen, goeiemiddag with the j sound, and that's very normal. That's how in the spoken language usually it's done. However, you always have to write goedemorgen and so on with a d. So mind that. And second, that's more greeting advice. When you're greeting in a formal environment, usually you shake hands the first time you meet, and after you leave the company or so, then you shake another time. But in between, you usually don't shake hands. In informal environments, men amongst each other shake hands, and everything else is a kiss, one on the cheek. However, these are our general guidelines, so if you're not sure, watch a little bit what the other persons are doing, and then you can copy what they do. Good, we've learned how to say hi. Now let's start with asking names in the next lecture. Asking names and saying bye. Hoe heet jij? Hoe heet u? Of wie ben jij? Wie bent u? Betekent in het Engels what's your name and who are you? So that was again in Dutch to start off well with this lecture. Hoe heet jij? Heet is from heten. It's to be named. So hoe heet jij? How are you named? That's quite easy. Of means or, and wie bent u or wie ben jij? That's bent u en ben jij that you recognize, but wie means who. Betekent, that's from the sentence, is the conjugation of to mean. So that's the third person in the singular. We're going to see that later in the course. But so that's this conjugation of to mean. And Engels, that's English. Let's see that sentence again. Hoe heet jij? Hoe heet u? Of wie bent u? Wie ben jij? Betekent in het Engels what's your name and who are you? How do you reply to this question, what's your name? Well, you can reply as following. Ik heet Jan. My name is Jan. That's also from the verb heten. Ik ben Pieter. I am Pieter. And mijn naam is Sarah. Mijn naam, that's my name. So the naam is name. My name is Sarah. You can add your family name after your first name. So you could say, mijn naam is Sarah de Ridder, if your name is Sarah de Ridder. If you're in an even more formal environment, then you can use mijn naam is meneer de Ridder, or mijn naam is mevrouw de Ridder, or ik heet meneer de Ridder, and so on. So meneer, that's Mr. Mevrouw is Mrs. So Mrs. de Ridder. That's a very formal environment when you're not wanting to share your first name. If you're asking for someone in a polite way, you can ask, bent u mevrouw de Ridder? Are you Mrs. de Ridder? De Ridder, by the way, means a knight, like a knight that fights in the medieval ages, but you can forget that for now. Many Dutch-speaking persons struggle with the difference between heten, to be named, and noemen, to be called. Noemen, to be called, is different from to be named. You can summarize it as follows. Hij heet Jonathan, maar we noemen hem John. Hij heet Jonathan, his name is Jonathan, but we call him John. Maar means but. Noemen, that's to call someone. Hem is him, very similar to English, John. So his official name is Jonathan, but we call him among friends John. So that's the difference between heten and noemen. After exchanging your names, you say nice to meet you, a pleasure to meet you, or so on. And in Dutch, that's with the expression aangename kennismaking. Let's pronounce that again. Aangename kennismaking. Just learn this expression, or easier, aangenaam. Aangenaam means nice, enjoyable. So then you could choose between the two. I would go for aangenaam, but if someone says aangenaam kennismaking, you know, okay, nice to meet you. To introduce someone else, you use this is Sarah, for example. So here, dit is Sarah, mijn vrouw. This is Sarah, my wife. You recognize there mevrouw and vrouw. Mevrouw means Mrs. and vrouw means wife or woman. De vrouw. The man is de man. That's the man or the husband. So that's the man. So now let's learn how to say bye. There you are. There you have the ways to say bye. Tot ziens means until I see you again. So yeah, that's a literal translation. You recognize there ziens, tot is until. Dag, that's hi, but that also means bye. You can even lengthen it when you're saying bye. You can say dag, and that's when you're waving your hand. That's what you would say. The long version of dag is nog een prettige dag. Een is the indefinite article. That means that it's translated as a in English, contrary to de and het, who are translated as die in English. Prettig means nice and even, well, not funny, but joyful. And dag means day. So dag means hi, bye, and day. That's a lot of meaning for one word. De dag. Goedenavond en goedenacht. Well, good evening, good night. You can also use those. Tijd voor oefeningen. Nu, tijd voor oefeningen. Time for exercises. For means for. And nu, you know, that's now. So let's do some exercises. Tijd voor oefeningen. So let's see the vocabulary now. Again, 5 seconds to pronounce. Hit the pause button if you need more time to pronounce. Let's go. Goed, that's good. De reeks, that's the row, series. Leren, that's the infinitive of to learn. Hallo, that's hi. Dag, that's hi, and bye. It can also be pronounced as dag. Zeggen, that's to say. Veel, that's a lot. Meer, that's more. Eindigen, that's the verb to end. Met means with. De dag, that's a day. Goedemorgen is good morning. Goedemiddag means good noon. Goedenamiddag means good afternoon. That's something that is only used in Belgium, not in the Netherlands. Goedenavond is good evening. Goedenacht is good night. Morgen means tomorrow. De morgen is morning. De middag is midday or noon. De namiddag is the afternoon. De avond is the evening. De nacht is the night. Heten is to be named. Wie means who. Of means or. Het Engels, that's a language, that's English. Mijn is my. De naam is name. De meneer is Mr. De mevrouw is Mrs. Noemen is to be called or to call, to name. Maar means but. Hem means him. Aangename kennismaking is nice to meet you. Aangenaam means nice and as well nice to meet you as the short version. Dit means this. De vrouw means the woman or the wife. De man means man or husband. Tot ziens means bye. Tot only means until. Un is the indefinite article, that's a or an. Prettig means nice, joyful. And voor means for. Hallo, in deze lessenreeks gaan we werkwoorden zien. Wat zijn werkwoorden? Woorden die werken. That's a lot of Dutch. So, hello, in this series of lectures, we're going to see verbs, werkwoorden. Un is usually the plural of nouns in Dutch. So when you see un at the end of a noun, you know it's the plural. What means what. Werkwoorden, you remember, that's verbs. And die werken, die means that or which. And werken, that's, you recognize there the noun, het werk, the job, the work. And that means to work, surprisingly. So in this section we're going to see the present tense of the verbs. Then we're going to see all the verbs that we've already seen and see a little bit of extra vocabulary. Then we're going to see the future tense. Don't worry, it's not too difficult. And we're going to see then some exercises and do a quiz afterwards. Okay, so the present tense of the verbs. Let's first put, as an example, the conjugation of zijn that we've already seen on the board. So there it is. Ik ben, je bent, hij is. Wij, jullie, zij zijn. So I hope that you know that by heart by now. And let's put the conjugation of werken, the verb we've just seen, on the board. So that's ik werk, jij werkt, hij werkt, wij werken, jullie werken, zij werken. Is there anything that strikes you? Do you feel that there's something different, or do you see something that's similar? Take a look at it, take a minute, put the video on pause, because we're going to see the 4 rules of verbs in Dutch in the present tense. So what are those 4 rules? Don't get very scared. We already know most of them. So the first rule is that the infinitive is used to make the plural. So that's wij werken, jullie werken, zij werken. That's the first rule. Already knew that one. The second one is that the single is used by taking the root of the verb. We're going to see just in a moment how that root is formed. So have a little patience there. The third rule is that the first person in the single uses the bare form of the root. So that's for werken, ik werk. And the second and the third person of the singular add a T to the root. So that's jij werkt and hij werkt. You just see that the T is added there. Now the fourth rule of the conjugation of verbs in the present tense in Dutch, we've also already seen, that's the je, jij. If je, jij is in front of the verb, then it takes a T at the end. But when je or jij, for example in a question, is behind the conjugated verb, then the T disappears magically. So that's the 4 rules to conjugate a verb. We've already seen most of them, so it mustn't be that difficult to conjugate verbs, right? So let's take a look at how the root is formed, because we need it for the single. The root is usually the infinitive minus en. So for werken, that's werk, because werken minus en, that's werk. However, there are some exceptions. For example, if just before the en there's a consonant, and just before that consonant there's a vowel, and a vowel that is pronounced longly, like e, a, u, or any other vowel. In that case, the en is taken away, but the single vowel is doubled. So to make it very concrete for you, to understand it well, let's take leren, to learn. So there's just before the en, there's a single consonant, that's R, and just before the single consonant, there's a single vowel, and that is pronounced longly. It's leren. It's not leren or leren. No, it's leren. And that will double. So how do you conjugate leren? You conjugate it as ik leer, jij leert, hij leert, wij, jullie, zij leren. So that's how to conjugate. So let's see 2 more remarks before we are going to see all the verbs back. The verbs that we've already seen, make some exercises and see some vocabulary. So 2 more exceptions there. Exception number 1 is when a verb ends with un or in. You see, for example, zien. What happens there is that the e remains the same. The root is formed just by taking the n away. So what consequence does it have for the singular? Well, singular is as follows. Ik zie, jij ziet, hij ziet. And you see there that the e remains there. It's quite logical because, as we've seen in the second section, u and e are, well, they're not one letter, but they're one sound. So we don't want to start changing the sound there just for the sake of the conjugation. So you can remember it like that. Second remark, verbs that end with aan, as gaan, have the following conjugation. It's ik ga, jij gaat, hij gaat, wij gaan, and so on. So you see there that the ik, because there's no t at the end, takes one a away, and the other 2, well, it doesn't end in en, but the n is only replaced by a t. So that's it. Let's look at some verbs we've already seen and see some new vocabulary. In this lecture, we're going to review the verbs we've already seen, the conjugations, then see some new verbs and see some vocabulary at the end. So let's start with the verbs that we already know. The verbs infinitive will be on the board. You will have 5 seconds to complete the conjugation. However, you can always put the pause button on. So let's start with this one. Heten. That's ik heet, jij heet, hij heet, wij, jullie, zij heten. Eindigen, that's ik eindig, jij eindigt, hij eindigt, wij, jullie, zij eindigen. The next one is zeggen. However, when a root ends with twice the same consonant, then you have to leave one out. So, good luck. So that's ik zeg, jij zegt, hij zegt, wij, jullie, zij zeggen. Noemen, ik noem, jij noemt, hij noemt, wij, jullie, zij noemen. Leren, that's ik leer, jij leert, hij leert, wij, jullie, zij leren. Doen, that's ik doe, jij doet, hij doet, wij, jullie, zij doen. One additional remark about doen. When we're asking questions in English, we sometimes use the verb to do. For example, does he learn? Or doesn't he learn? However, in Dutch, this is never done. So it's instead of does he learn, it's leert hij. Doen is not put there. Betekenen, that's ik beteken, jij betekent, hij betekent, wij, jullie, zij betekenen. You might have been tempted to double the E there, beteken, but it has to be a long vowel that is doubled. And in betekenen, the E there just before the EN is not a long vowel. So otherwise it would be betekenen. And then, if the pronunciation was like that, you could have put the double E there, but not in this case. Next one. Gaan, ik ga, jij gaat, hij gaat, wij, jullie, zij gaan. Zien, ik zie, jij ziet, hij ziet, wij, jullie, zij zien. Zijn, that's from a few sections ago. Ik ben, jij bent, hij is, wij, jullie, zij zijn. Let's see new verbs. We're going to start with kunnen, that's to be able to. So it's translated as I can, you can, he can, and so on. So, the conjugation is ik kan, jij kan or kunt, hij kan, wij, jullie, zij kunnen. However, one important remark there, you see that there are 2 options there with jij. So it's jij kan or jij kunt. However, when you're inverting, for example, for questions, you cannot use kunt. Because when we're inverting, we take the T away, so you can only use kan je and not kunt je. Next one is hebben. There's one little exception there in the third person. It's hij heeft. Mind as well that there's a double B, so we have to make it single there, and it becomes ik heb, jij hebt, hij heeft, wij, jullie, zij hebben. Next one is moeten, and that is there because when the root ends with a T, then you're not allowed to double the T. And all the other letters, you just put the T next to the root. But with moeten, it doesn't happen. As well, when your root ends with a D, then you have to put a T. And that won't make a difference to the sound, because D and T sound the same, so you only say once t, but you have to put the T there. So for moeten, that's ik moet, jij moet, hij moet, wij, jullie, zij moeten. Moeten means to must. Next one is weten, to know. That's ik weet, jij weet, hij weet, wij, jullie, zij weten. And then komen, that means to come. There's a little bit of an exception there, because the root is, the O there is not doubled in the root. So that's ik kom, jij komt, hij komt, wij, jullie, zij komen. And now let's finish with some vocabulary, extra vocabulary here. Study it well, and let's go. Het werkwoord, that's the verb. What means what. Die means that, which. Iets means something. And eerst means first. Let's see now the future tense of the verbs in Dutch. But let's start with the present tense to form the future. What is the present tense used for in Dutch? Well, the present tense has more or less the same use as in English. So for habits, ongoing actions, for that you would use the present. But also, if there's a word like tomorrow or next week, next month, next year, and there we would be able to form the future tense. It's not an obligation, it's a possibility. So, for example, morgen leren jullie Nederlands. That's tomorrow you're going to learn Dutch. You hear that, you're going to, it's a future tense. However, it's written in the present tense. So that's a possibility. Another possibility is to use the real future tense. So, as we've seen already, that's the conjugation of gaan plus an infinitive. So, for example, morgen gaan jullie Nederlands leren. Tomorrow you're going to learn Dutch. It's just the same as the previous sentence. So, morgen leren jullie Nederlands and morgen gaan jullie Nederlands leren mean exactly the same, and you can use both, whatever fits you. However, it's important to remember that both options are possible, because if someone will speak to you in Dutch with morgen and you'll be like, oh my god, there's no future tense there, you know, it's okay for that person. So you don't need to teach that Dutch person, a lesson. Another way to form the future tense, it is with the verb zullen. Zullen, we haven't seen it, but then you would just replace the gaan by zullen. For example, morgen zullen jullie Nederlands leren. There's a slight difference with gaan, because usually persons who speak Dutch use gaan. Zullen is more with an obligatory sense, so you're somehow obliged to do it, or there's a moral obligation to do something. For example, in this example, as we've already seen, one day, the day before you think you'll learn Dutch, you would say to your parents or to a friend or to a girlfriend, whoever, another partner, morgen ga ik Nederlands leren. And then that partner will be, okay, or your parents will be, okay, well, tomorrow he's going to learn Dutch. However, if the day after you haven't studied Dutch and your parents or your girlfriend or your friend will be like, you haven't studied Dutch, morgen zal je Nederlands leren. And there you see, morgen zal je Nederlands leren. That's more obligatory because you didn't study Dutch yesterday. So that's a way to remember it. So zullen is more obligatory. The conjugation of zullen follows the conjugation of kunnen, which we've seen in the previous lecture. So that's ik zal, jij zal, or zult, but not for the inversion. Hij zal, wij, jullie, zij zullen. So that's it for the future tense. One more remark about the infinitives in Dutch, their position in their sentence. If you say, for example, he can mean something in society or in an NGO or in a company or wherever, then something is at the end of the sentence. However, in Dutch, this is not going to happen. Something will go a little bit before, and the infinitive will go at the end of the sentence. So that's hij kan iets betekenen. Betekenen is at the end, whereas to mean is not at the end in English. Sometimes this can lead to a little bit of confusion because there are so many infinitives that it becomes quite difficult to understand the sentence. For example, we zullen het morgen moeten kunnen weten. That's translated as we should be able to know it tomorrow. You see there again, it, tomorrow, is at the end of the sentence, not at the beginning. Whereas in Dutch, all the infinitives are at the end. Moeten kunnen weten, they're at the end. So mind that the infinitives will always be at the end. Tijd voor oefeningen. Hallo en welkom in lessenreeks nummer 6. Welcome means welcome, nummer means number, and 6 means 6. In deze lessenreeks gaan we enkele nieuwe gespreksonderwerpen zien. Enkele means some, nieuw means new. Gespreksonderwerp is a combination of gesprek, that's a discussion, and onderwerp, that's a subject. So that's discussion subjects. In de eerste les gaat het over vragen, in les 2 over die, dat en deze. Daarna in les 3 over studeren. So vragen, that's questions. Les 2 is lesson number 2. Daar means there, en daarna thereafter. Lesson 3 is les 3. Studeren means studying. In les 4 zien we de woordenschat. Daarna zijn er oefeningen in les 5 en een quiz. So that's lesson 4, that's lesson 4. De woordenschat, that's again a combination of words. Woorden, words. Schat means treasure. A treasure of words, that's a vocabulary. Les 5, that's lesson 5. And quiz, well, that's a quiz. Let's see the whole thing again. Hallo en welkom in lessenreeks nummer 6. In deze lessenreeks gaan we enkele nieuwe gespreksonderwerpen zien. In de eerste les gaat het over vragen. In les 2 over dit, die en dat. Daarna in les 3 over studeren. En in les 4 zien we de woordenschat. Daarna zijn er oefeningen en een quiz. So, if you translate it all, hello and welcome in a series of lectures number 6. In this series of lectures, we're going to see some new discussion topics. In the first lesson, we're going to talk about questions. In the second lecture, about this and that. And afterwards, in lesson 3, about studying. In lesson 4, we're going to see the vocabulary. And afterwards, in lesson 5, there are exercises and a quiz. Let's see how we form questions in Dutch now. Is it very different from English? No, it's exactly the same actually, so that's not difficult at all. There are two types of questions in English, just as in Dutch. The ones that start with a verb, for example, luister je. Luisteren is listening, so that's, are you listening? Do you listen? And questions, second type of questions, that start with words like what, wie, and who. So that's what, who, and how. For example, wie luistert? Who listens? Who's listening here? Other words like what, wie, and who are waar, waarom, and wanneer. Waar is where, waarom is why, and wanneer is when. let's see some questions now that you will need to say a lot when you're speaking to Dutch-speaking persons. The first question is, kan u langzaam spreken alstublieft? That's langzaam means slowly, spreken is to speak, and alstublieft is please. So together that's, can you speak more slowly please? So when a Dutch person says, and if you really don't understand anything, kan u langzaam spreken alstublieft? And then they will be like, okay, I'll speak a little bit more slowly. Second question you need to ask a lot is, kan u het nog eens herhalen alstublieft? Can you please repeat that once again? Nog eens means once again. Eens is once and nog is again, so that's once again. Herhalen is to repeat. You can say that just after once. You can say, kan u dat nog eens herhalen? Just after they said it once. If you say once again, that might sound in English as if the person has repeated it already. In Dutch, it doesn't sound the same. Kan u dat nog eens herhalen? Just after once is okay. Third sentence you need to ask a lot. Kan u dat in het Nederlands zeggen, alstublieft? Can you please say that in Dutch? Dat means that. I'm going to see that again in the next lecture. So, kan u dat nog eens in het Nederlands zeggen, alstublieft? If someone is speaking in English, they hear that you have a little bit of an accent in Dutch, and they keep on speaking in English, then you say it. Kan u dat in het Nederlands zeggen, alstublieft? Last question you have to ask is, hoe zegt men dat in het Engels, or hoe zegt men dat in het Nederlands? How do you say that in English or in Dutch? Men is the impartial third. I would translate it as one. So how does that one say that in Dutch? How does one say that in English? So let's see that, die, and all the other ones in the next lecture. In this lecture, we're going to talk about words like that, who, which, those, these, and so on. So let's make a distinction here. The first distinction is that of that, who, and which. That, who, and which. Why do you use that, who, and which? Well, that's to, in this case, say a little bit more about a subject. For example, the car that drives is red. That drives is about the car. The main event in the sentence is the car is red, but you want to add something to that subject. The car that drives is red. Another example, Jack, who visited me last week, was painting his ceiling. Who visited last week? That's about Jack, and was painting his ceiling. That's, the main sentence. So we're going to use that, who, and which for that. In that case, Dutch will use the words die and dat. So that's for sentences about a subject. And die is used for the words. So where the article is de, we use die. And when the article is het, we use dat. For example, de dagen die eindigen. So that's the days, that, and de dagen. So we use die. It's a little sentence about the days. Second one, het woord dat moeilijk is, leer ik. Het woord, that's a het word. So we use dat, moeilijk is. Moeilijk means difficult, by the way. Leer ik. So het woord leer ik. That's the main event of the sentence. And then if you have a subsentence there, you would use dat or die and dat because it's het woord. Good. Remember, if there's a subsentence or something to say about a word, you use die and dat in Dutch for that, which, or who. Who, very important, in this case is not translated as wie, that we've seen as well in the previous lecture. Wie is never used to introduce a sub-sentence, so burn that out of your mind. That's different from English. So, second set. It's that, this, these, and those. That in English is the same as the previous that, but in Dutch it's a little bit more complicated. In Dutch we say dit en deze and dat en die to indicate something. So, for example, this car, that car, these cars, those cars. In Dutch, a difference is made again between de and het words. So, de words use die and deze, and het words use dit and dat. You can remember that by the ending of the word dit and dat both end with a t, so that's het words, and die and deze end with an e, so that's for de woorden. In English this is different, because there the distinction is made whether it's single or plural. Here, de can both be for the single and for the plural, so that's something very different from English. Remember that. And as well, just as in English, there's a difference between things that are close to you and things that are far away from you. The things that are close to you, you would use dit and deze, and the things that are far away from you, you would use dat and die. So these were the basic rules behind that, which, who, these, those, and all the other ones. Remember that it goes a little bit further, but this is difficult even for native Dutch speakers to sometimes use the correct word. So you know the basic rules, that's already a lot now. Let's do some quick exercises to train you in those basic rules. So here you see some sentences with blanks. You should fill these up with dat, die, dit, or deze. So the first one is het nummer we vinden is goed. The second one is nummers zijn goed. That's the plural, nummers. Sometimes it's with an S, but most of the time it's with en, a plural. Nummer is goed. That's the third sentence. So, I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. And a few seconds are over. Hit the pause if you're still doubting what to fill in. So the first one, het nummer dat we vinden is goed. Why is it dat? Because it's a sub-sentence. The number that we find is good. So that we find is a sub-sentence to nummer, and it's dat because it's het nummer. Second one, deze or die nummers zijn goed, because it's in the plural and it's an indicative pronoun, so it's to point at something. The third one, dat nummer is goed or dit nummer is goed, because you're pointing again towards something. And now it's for a het word, because it's het nummer, and before it was de nummers, so that's a de word. In this lecture, we're going to take our conversation a little bit further, and we're going to talk about studying which questions you can expect when you're studying Dutch, and which questions in Dutch you might be expecting. So that's exciting. But let's first take our conversation a little bit further. The last time we talked about talking with people in Dutch, we talked about how to ask names and how to say hello. And after you've asked names, if you know someone, you would usually ask, well, how is it going? Are you going well? And how do you say that? In Dutch, well, we've already seen that actually. Hoe gaat het? Or hoe is het? How is it going? Or how is it? And how can you reply to that? Well, there's many different ways, and these are some of the ways. Uitstekend means excellent. Goed means good. Niet slecht means not bad. And slecht means bad. And if it really goes bad, then you would say zeer slecht, very bad. Zeer means very. So these are ways to reply to that question. And if you're polite, and I hope you are polite sometimes, preferably, then you would ask as well to the person, well, how is it going with you? You can repeat the whole sentence, but you can shorten it as well. So, if you say the whole sentence, then you would say, en hoe gaat het met u? Or, en hoe gaat het met jou. So that's u for the formal one, jou for the informal one. However, you can also say en met u or en met jou. You probably noticed something. U, well, yeah, we've seen it already. But jou, why jou? Why isn't it yeah? In English, when you're saying with you, that's the same as the subject. You, simply, without anything, and with you, it's twice you. Why is it different in Dutch? Well, that's a very good question. Let's put on the board with plus the subject. So, there you go. That's I becomes with me, you becomes with you, he becomes with him, she becomes with her. So you see there that I turns into me, but you remains the same. Well, in Dutch, it also changes. So that's why it's different. So in the second column there, with you will be different, and that's with jou. Now you may ask, well, how do I know when I use jij and how do I know when I use jou? How can I do that? Well, there's a simple trick. If you use he instead of you, and the he becomes a him, then you have to use a jou. If the he remains a he, then you use jij. So in this case, and how is it going with he? You won't say. You will say, and how is it going with him? So you use jou, and that's a trick, how to know whether you have to use jij or jou. Let's see some questions about studying you may ask to your fellow students. Very well, ask a lot of questions to anyone you see in Dutch. It's a perfect practice to practice your Dutch. Or if you receive the questions, we'll see some answers. So the first question is, hoe lang studeer je al Nederlands? So that's, hoe lang studeer je al Nederlands? Hoe, you know how. Lang means long. Studeer, that's conjugation of studeren. That's to study, we've already seen that one. Al means already. So, hoe lang studeer je al Nederlands? How long are you already studying Dutch? You can answer 1 jaar. 1 year. Next question. Wat vind je moeilijk aan Nederlands? Vinden, that's to find. So that's what do you find difficult about Dutch? Then you could answer de zinnen maken. That's making the sentences. Zin means a sentence. Maken, that's the infinitive of to make. Third question. Wie is jouw leerkracht? Wie, you know, it's who. Jou, you see there that there's a W behind. That's the possessive. It's your. So don't confuse it with jou without a W. So to listen to jou or jou is a little bit difficult, but remember that there's a huge difference between jou and jou. Wie is jouw leerkracht? Leerkracht is teacher. See there, but don't remember that for now. Leer, that's to learn. Kracht is force. So that's the force to learn. That's me. So you would answer, hij heet Alain. His name is Alan. It's de leerkracht, by the way. Next question. Hoe oefen je? How do you practice? Or hoe oefen je Nederlands? Door veel te praten en te luisteren. By talking a lot and listening a lot. That's as well two good ways to learn a language, with any language. So, next question. Waarom leer je Nederlands? Why do you learn Dutch? And the answer is om naar Nederland te reizen. That means in order to travel to the Netherlands. Om means in order. Naar is to, but naar is geographically. So you're going to a place or to a house or to a museum. Then you would say naar. Nederland, that's the Netherlands. Reizen is to travel. Mind that reizen in the singular is ik reis. Then the Z turns into an S. If it's not with en at the end. So jij reist, hij reist. That's as well with an S. One little thing before we start the exercises. om en door, use te with an infinitive. For example, om te reizen, in order to travel, or door te praten, by talking. These use the te just before the infinitive, and this te is not translated. There are other words that use this te as well, so if you see it in a text, then you know it doesn't mean too much as just in front of an infinitive. Now, tijd voor oefeningen. Let's make some pronunciation exercises. We have seen a lot of vocabulary, so brace yourself for all this vocabulary. Let's start with this one. Waar means where. Waarom means why. Wanneer means when. Welkom means welcome. Het nummer means number. Enkel, enkele. Enkel means only, and enkele means some. Nieuw means new. Het gesprek means discussion. Het onderwerp is subject. Het gespreksonderwerp is the discussion subject. Over means about. Studeren means to study. De vraag is a question. Vragen is to ask. Eens means once. Het eens zijn means to agree. Zes, vijf, vier, drie, twee, één. That's 6 to 1. Mind as well the één, there's two stripes there. That's to make the difference with een. Een is a and één is 1. Daar, that's there in space. So if you want someone to go somewhere, you say there, and you don't use you use daar. Daarna means after that. De schat means treasure. You can also use it as a pet name to your partner. You would say schat, dag schat, hi treasure. De woordenschat is vocabulary. De quiz means a quiz. Langzaam is slowly or slow. Spreken means to speak. Alstublieft, alsjeblieft, that's please, and it depends on whether you're speaking formally or informally. Alstublieft is formally, alsjeblieft is informally. Sometimes Dutch persons write AUB, like you see on the board there, and that means alsjeblieft. And sometimes herhalen means to repeat. Men means one, like a third person, impartially. So one says this or one thinks that. Dat means that. Uitstekend means excellent. Niet means not. Slecht means bad. Zeer means very. Jou means you. Lang means long. Studeren means to study. Al means already. Nederland means the Netherlands. Vinden means to find. Moeilijk means difficult. Aan means to or at. Jou and u means your in the single, so both informally and formally. De leerkracht is teacher. Oefenen means to exercise. Het jaar means year. De zin means sentence in a grammatical sense, not the death sentence. Maken means to make. Door means by. Praten is to talk. Luisteren is to listen. Om means in order to. Naar means to, towards in a geographical sense. Reizen means to travel. In a single, the Z changes into an S. Goed zo means well done. Zo means like that. Vooral means especially. Dus means so. Zeker means sure. Straks means soon or shortly. Van means from or of. Willen means to want. Hallo, in deze lessenreeks nummer 7 gaan we het over de negatieve vorm hebben. 7 means 7. Het hebben over means to talk about something. It's an expression. And the negatieve vorm is the negative form. Negatief is negative, vorm is form. In les 1 gaan we de theorie zien, in les 2 en 3 oefeningen en we eindigen met een quiz. Theorie, that's the theory. Are you getting used to this Dutch? Because in the course we'll see more and more Dutch, sometimes with the sentences on the board, sometimes in the future without the sentences on the board. So if you have any trouble with it, don't hesitate to watch the video again, to go through your vocabulary and to ask a question, preferably in het Nederlands, in Dutch. So it's very important that you get more and more used to listening to Dutch, so that when a person really starts to talk to you in Dutch, if that hasn't happened yet, you will be more secure to answer that person, even in English, preferably in Dutch. So in this section, we're going to see the negative. How is the negative in Dutch? Well, usually it's with niet and with geen. Niet, we've seen it in the previous chapter, is similar to not, and geen, that's a new word. And geen we use in front of nouns. Sometimes there can be an adjective just in front of the noun, and then we would still use geen. Let's see some examples. 2 voorbeelden. 2 examples. Het voorbeeld, that's an example. Ik zie geen voorbeelden. I don't see the examples. So you see, geen is in front of the noun, het voorbeeld, well, de voorbeelden. So that's why it's geen and not niet. On the other hand, ik zie het niet. I don't see it. Het, that's not a noun. So we use niet. However, there are sometimes options where you can use both niet and geen, as in the first example here, het eerste voorbeeld. Ik zie geen voorbeelden can also be translated as ik zie de voorbeelden niet. I don't see the examples. You see that the appears there. That's the article in front of voorbeelden that gets eaten by geen. But both mean the same. Ik zie geen voorbeelden, ik zie de voorbeelden niet. So you have a choice there. In English, sometimes not gets added to the verb to do. So like, he doesn't see examples, for example. That doesn't happen in Dutch. So niet always remains a single word. It doesn't get added to the verb. Same goes for geen. 2 more remarks before we see some negative words. Neen and nee means the same, so there's just an N added there. You can add it. But these are translated as no. And they are only translated as the opposite of yes. So you wouldn't be able to say, ik zie geen voorbeelden. I don't see no examples. No. But you can say, if someone asks you a question, do you see examples? Zie je voorbeelden? You could answer, nee, ik zie geen voorbeelden. So, nee, remember that. It doesn't stand with nouns. It's only as the opposite of yes. Second remark, if you want to say not any, I don't see any example, then you would use the word enkel or enkele. Enkel is for het words, enkele for de words. So you would then say, ik zie geen enkel voorbeeld. I don't see any examples. Or, je vult geen enkele quiz in. You don't fill in any quiz. Invullen, that's kind of a special verb, but we're going to see that in the pronunciation exercises. The in is separated from invullen and it goes at the back of the sentence. More about that in the pronunciation exercises. But you see, je vult geen enkele quiz in. You don't fill in any quiz. And it's the quiz, so you say geen enkele quiz. So that's how you say not any. We eindigen de les met enkele negatieve woorden. We finish the lesson with some negative words. Iets in the negative sense becomes niets. Iets is something, niets is nothing. So that's quite easy to learn. And the same goes for iemand, someone. Niemand is no one. Third one is ooit, means once. Nooit is never. And then the last one, ergens means somewhere. Nergens means nowhere. En nu gaan we oefenen. So let's practice the vocabulary. We oefenen nu de woordenschat. 5 seconds. Good luck. De vorm, that's the form. Negatief, that's negative. De theorie, that's theory. Geen means not. Het voorbeeld, that's the example. Neen or nee means no. Niets means nothing. Zeven means 7. Iemand is someone. Niemand is no one. Ooit means once. Nooit means never. Ergens means somewhere. Nergens means nowhere. Sorry means sorry. Invullen means to fill in, and here you have the conjugation, so you see that the in goes at the end. That's ik vul in, jij vult in, hij vult in, wij vullen in, jullie vullen in en zij vullen in. Vertalen, that's to translate. Zitten means to sit. De tafel means table. Rechts means right, to the right, as the opposite of left. Links means left. And last one, het probleem is problem. Hallo, in deze les gaan we het over landen hebben. Wat zijn landen? In het Engels countries. In les 1 gaan we het over landen hebben. In les 2 over de imperatief, the imperative in het Engels. In les 3 en 4 zijn er oefeningen. En dan is er de quiz in les 5. Dan means then or then. So let's talk about countries. A question that you might receive a lot if you're a foreigner in a Dutch-speaking country. Waar kom jij vandaan? Where do you come from? Or, waar ben jij van afkomstig? Again, where do you come from? Vandaan is with come And afkomstig zijn van, that's also an expression, so you need to know these expressions. Don't forget you can put those questions in the formal form. Waar komt u vandaan? Waar bent u van afkomstig? You can actually leave the afkomstig, you can drop it, you don't need to put it there. So what do you answer to that? You answer to that, ik kom uit België, in my case. Or, ik ben van België, again in my case, I come from Belgium. Did you hear België? It's not België. And did you notice that there were 2 dots on the I in België? Well, those 2 things are related to each other. The 2 dots on the België are there for pronunciation reasons, and the double dot is always there for pronunciation reasons. It means that the vowel just before and the vowel on which it stands should be pronounced separately. So België, and that's why it's België and not België. So if you see that again, you know, I have to pronounce the 2 separately. You can also ask what someone's nationality is. What is jouw or what is uw nationaliteit? Nationaliteit means nationality. And then you can answer, ik ben een Belg, or ik ben Belg, I am Belgian, or we zijn allemaal Belgen in the plural. So that's Belg, Belgian, Belgen, Belgians. Allemaal means all. However, it's a little bit more complicated than that. There's also a female form and there's also an adjective for Belgian. In English, that's all the same. It's Belgian. However, so in Dutch, it's a little bit different, and we're going to see now the differences. So, for a male person, it's Belg. For a female person, it's Belgische. For the plural, we've seen Belgen, and the adjective is Belgisch. However, this is more for your passive knowledge. You don't need to actively know all those forms. If you know België is Belgium, Belg, and Belgen, well, that's the plural you can deduct from it. That's already a lot. And one funny thing about Belgian women is that they have Belg on their ID card. They don't have Belgische. So even the Belgian administration doesn't even know the difference. So I'm sure that no one will do something bad to you if you don't know the difference between Belg and Belgisch. So let's see some of the surrounding countries of Belgium and the Netherlands. And these are, first of all, het Verenigd Koninkrijk. That's the United Kingdom. And you say Brit, Britse, Britten, and Brits. So that's, again, male, female, plural. And then the adjective Nederland, we've already seen, that's the Netherlands. Dutch person, Dutch man is Nederlander, Nederlandse, Nederlanders, Nederlands, which is also the language. About that a little bit more in just a few seconds. Another country that is neighboring the Netherlands is Duitsland, that's Germany. So Duitser is a German, Duitse is a female German, Duitsers is Germans, and Duits is German. Another one, Luxembourg, that's Luxemburger, Luxemburgse, Luxemburgers, Luxemburgs. And you see there a pattern appearing. So the first one is with ER, the second one with SE for the female, and the plural is ers, and then the language and the adjective, it ends with an S. But the next one is a bit of an exception there. Frankrijk, that's France, een Fransman, een Française, that's derived from French, Fransen, and Frans. You notice that Nederlands, that's also a language, well, so is Frans and Luxembourgs and Duits. So the adjective is sometimes the language, so which can be a noun, and it's in het Nederlands. But when you don't see the het there, it might be an adjective. However, watch out, because Belgisch, that's the adjective for Belgian, that's not a language. And Engels, that's the language, is not the same as Brits. Don't say to a Scottish person or to someone from Northern Ireland or from Wales that he's an English person. They won't really appreciate that. So mind these cultural sensitivities. And about cultural sensitivities, let's talk a little bit more about Flanders. Flanders is the part in Belgium where one speaks Dutch and where I am from. Ik ben van Vlaanderen. The inhabitants are Vlamingen, that's the Flemish persons, and the language is Vlaams, which is also the adjective. But you don't need to know those things. That's just for cultural exploration. So it's purely an administrative distinction because Flanders is a region, and well, they had to give a name to it, so it was Vlaanderen. But it's also a political sensitive issue because some people say they are proud to be Flemish and they want Flanders to be independent and they don't really like to be called Belgians. When someone says, ik ben een Vlaming, don't say, nee, jij bent een Belg, you're a Belgian. Then those persons won't really appreciate that. So mind that. One last question is, waar woon je? Where do you live? Ik woon in België. België, you can replace it by Frankrijk or by the Nederland or by the town where you live in. Brussels, for example, that's the capital of Belgium. Wonen means to live, however, it means more to reside. So you say it to say it where your home is. Dus nu weet je veel meer over landen in het Nederlands. So now you know a lot more about countries in Dutch. Laten we de imperatief leren. Let's learn the imperative. The imperative is very easy. It's just, as in English, it's the first person in the singular. So, for example, let's put some examples on the board. Leer, learn, vul in, fill in. Mind, it's also separated there. Vertaal, translate. So, that's very easy. Not much to say. As in English, to be is an exception. Because in English you say be, and that's the infinitive. That's not am. That's not the first person in the singular. In Dutch it's also an exception. It's wees, be. And it's not ben. Not just as in English. One more word about let's. That's the imperative for more than one person. You say let's do this. Let's learn the imperative. You see it there above. So we've already seen that. And some other examples are laten we naar Frankrijk gaan. Let's go to France. So that there you use laten we. So let us. And another example. Laten we Duits spreken. Let's talk in German. But we were not going to talk in German. That would complicate things. So remember, laten we is let us. And it also means to let someone go, to let someone be, but that's for your passive knowledge. It's not very often used. By the way, Duits, it can be very confusing because you have Dutch, Duits, and Deutsch. Many Dutch persons sometimes struggle when they see that abroad. Those who don't know English very much. Dutch is Dutch in English. Deutsch is German in German. And Duits is German in Dutch. So that's how you can make the distinction. That's very similar, and that's, well, normal that people don't really know how to make the distinction for that. En nu de woordenschat in les 3. En nu de woordenschat in les 3. Let's start with this one. Waar kom je vandaan? That's the expression, where do you come from? Van waar ben je afkomstig? That's where do you come from again. België, it's Belgium. Belg, Belgische, Belgen. That's Belgian and Belgians. Belgisch, that's the adjective for Belgian. Het Verenigd Koninkrijk, that's the United Kingdom. Britse, Britten, that's Britons from the United Kingdom. Brits, that's British. Frankrijk, that's France. Fransman, Française, Fransen. That's French. Frans, that's the adjective, that's French. Luxembourg, that's Luxembourg. Luxemburger, Luxemburgse, Luxemburgers, that's Luxembourgian, Luxembourgians. Luxemburgs, that's Luxembourgian, that's the adjective. Nederland, that's the Netherlands. Nederlander, Nederlandse, Nederlanders, that's the Dutch people. Nederlands, that's the Dutch, that's the language and the adjective. Duitsland, that's Germany. Duitser, Duitse, Duitsers, that's German, Germans. Duits, that's German, the adjective. Wonen, that's to live, to reside. Laten, that's to let, to leave. De taal, that's language. Het land, that's country. De nationaliteit, that's nationality. Dan is then or then. Allemaal means all. Hallo, in deze lessenreeks gaan we substantieven, adjectieven en persoonlijke voornaamwoorden zien. Substantieven means nouns in het Engels. Adjectieven is adjectives in het Engels. Persoonlijke voornaamwoorden zijn personal pronouns in het Engels. Maar die mag je allemaal vergeten. Mag is of mogen, to be allowed to, and vergeten is to forget. So you are allowed to forget these terms, substantieven, adjectieven en persoonlijke voornaamwoorden. Die mag je allemaal vergeten. In les 1 zien we de substantieven, in les 2 de adjectieven, in les 3 de persoonlijke voornaamwoorden. In les 4 en 5 zien we oefeningen en we eindigen met een quiz. Dus substantieven. We're going to review the articles of the nouns and we're going to see a little bit more about the plural of nouns in Dutch. So the articles, let's refresh our memories, are de, het and de. De in the single is for male and female nouns. Het is for asexual nouns. And de is used in the plural for both de nouns and het nouns. So far, so good. Now, the de in the singular is used for both male and the female. So, is it important to know whether a noun is male or female in Dutch? Because in English it's the same. You use the, and there's male and female nouns, and it's not that important to know the difference between male and female. And in Dutch, it's the same. You will only see it when you're using the possessive. For example, de man zijn taal and de vrouw haar taal. So that's the man's language and the woman's language. But you see there already the man, you can also replace it by a name, by Pieter, for example. Pieter zijn taal. the man, that's male. A man is male. And Pieter, that's a male name, so you know that it will be zijn taal and not haar taal, because if it was a woman, then you would say haar taal. De vrouw haar taal, Mieke haar taal. So there's where you see a difference between the male and the female for the words. Mind, however, that the het words, the asexual nouns, take over the zijn for the possessive. So they behave like male words. So for example, het land zijn talen. The country's languages. Het land is a het word, so it uses zijn taal. However, there is one small exception where the gender of the word would make a difference, and that's the same as for English. When you say the city, her plans, well, is it the city his plans or is it the city her plans? And that happens as well in Dutch. De stad haar plannen, that's the plans of the city. Is it haar or is it zijn? And in this case, it's haar, but that's a mistake that even Dutch-speaking persons sometimes make. They say de stad zijn plannen. They have a little bit that feeling and they would somehow prefer haar, so they would feel it. So it's really an exception of an exception, so you don't need to know that. It's something nice to know. So let's talk a little bit about the plural. The plural, as we've already seen, it usually ends with an en or with an s. For example, het antwoord, de antwoorden, de tafel, de tafels. Note, however, if the noun ends with an s or an f, the s or s will change. The s will become a z and the f will become a v. For example, het huis, the home, the house. House is a better translation. De huizen. And you see there that the s changes into a z. Two more remarks to say about the plural. Let's see some examples for this. So that's taal, talen, and zin, zinnen. You see there that the double vowel changes into a single vowel. It's double A and it becomes a single A. That happens when there's a consonant at the end of the noun just before two the same vowels. Then the vowel becomes single. That's it. That's just to keep the sound the same. It's the same so for zin, zinnen. The N is doubled there. That's to keep the E an E. Otherwise it would be zin, zieden, and that doesn't sound right. You have to keep the length of the vowel in both cases the same. So taal, talen, not tallen. Zin, zinnen, not zinnen. One last remark to help you with finding the right plural. The following endings usually add an S to form the plural. So that's aar, l, m, n, So when you see those at the end of a word, then you will already be quite sure that you have to add an S to form the plural. For example, tafel, tafels. Tafel ends with el, so an S is added to form the plural. En nu laten we het over de adjectieven hebben. Let's talk about the adjectives. We're going to see the difference between adjectives and adverbs in Dutch, as well as when it adapts to the noun, just when it's in front of a noun, an adjective. So, adjectives and adverbs in English, how is it? How do you see the difference between adjectives and adverbs? First of all, adjectives are words that stand with a noun. For example, the black cat. So black is an adjective that says a little bit about the noun cat. However, adverbs, and the name already shows a little bit of it, stand with verbs. For example, we travel nicely. Nicely is about the traveling, it's not about we. So that's an adverb. In English, you see the difference between an adverb and an adjective by the li at the end of the adverb. So it's nicely it's not nice. It's not we travel nice, no, it's we travel nicely. In Dutch, there is no difference between the adjectives and the adverbs. They're spelled just the same. There's no li added or anything else that happens with the adjective. Let's see two examples here. We reizen aangenaam, we travel nicely, and de aangename reis, the nice travel or the nice trip. So you see there, aangenaam, aangename, that's spelled more or less the same. The I that is added with the adjective, aangename reis, that's the second part of this lecture. Usually when an adjective is just in front of a noun in Dutch, then the adjective will have an I at the end. So, for example, de aangename reis, you see there's an I that appeared there. This also counts when you use multiple adjectives in front of a noun. For example, de leuke grote reis, the nice big travel or trip. So you see there, leuke, there's an I added there. Grote, there's an I added there. Grote, by the way, without the I is double O. So this is the same as for the plural of nouns. Groot, grote, groot, double O, grote, single O, because there's only one consonant there just after the two vowels. So, de leuke grote reis. There is one exception though when the adjective doesn't take an I at the end, and that's with het words in the single when there is no article or the article is een or geen. So let's see an example to show that to you. Het kleine huis, that's the small house. There you see the I appearing, but that's because the article het is still there. When the article is still there, then you can use the I, het kleine huis. However, klein huis, small house, no I. Een klein huis, a small house, no I. Geen klein huis, no small house, no I. So now you know when you have to put an I at the end of an adjective. If you're not sure, just put an I there if you don't know if it's a het word, because usually in Dutch there's an I. In this lecture we're going to talk about the personal pronouns. Do you remember when we talked about ja? That was quite an issue, because if you say I see you in English, well, you is the same as you when it's in the subject. For example, you see me is different. However, I see you doesn't change. I changed into me and you just remains the same. So now we're going to see the whole conjugation of these personal pronouns of me, you, him, her, and so on. So let's put them on the board. So you can read them, and you can read them together with me if you want. So that's me or mij, that's je or jou, that's hem, so that's him, haar, that's her, ons is us, jullie is you in the plural, and then there's hen, that's them, and there's u as well for the polite way. So these are the ones. One quite important remark about these personal pronouns is that they take in Dutch, unlike in English, the place directly after the conjugated verb in a sentence. So when you're making a sentence in Dutch, you have to put these words just after the conjugated verb. So for example, I don't want to see you in the car. You in the sentence, I don't want to see you, is not just after the conjugated verb, but in Dutch it is. Ik wil jullie, I don't want to see you, ik wil jullie niet in de auto zien. So you see there, jullie is just after wil. Ik wil, I want. So now you know where to place these personal pronouns. The second part of this lecture, we're going to see the reflexive verbs. These are the verbs that, reflect on someone. For example, if you say, I wash myself, that reflects on you, and you wash yourself, and so on. And for those reflexive verbs, we're going to use those personal pronouns because, well, I wash myself, me, that's somehow the same. Well, it changes. So let's see an example of a verb that's reflexive. That's zich voorstellen. That's to introduce yourself. So, who do you introduce? Well, you introduce yourself. Without the zich, it means to present, but zich voorstellen, that's to introduce yourself. Zich, by the way, that's how you can see in the infinitive, that verb, that's a reflexive verb. So, zich voorstellen, that's to introduce yourself. It's not to present something. Let's see an example. Jij stelt je voor. You see there, je appears there. And wij stellen ons voor. You introduce yourself and we introduce ourselves. So, voorstellen as well, that's the same as for invullen, if you remember that. Invullen, it's split in between two parts, and it becomes ik vul in. And then the in is further away in the sentence. Voorstellen, that's just the same. Ik stel me voor, that's I introduce myself. However, the reflexive verbs in the third person will take the zich from the infinitive. So that's a little bit more complicated, but see the advantage of being able to use reflexive verbs in Dutch. So, for example, if you say he presents himself, you wouldn't say hij stelt hem voor, you would say hij stelt zich voor. And u stelt zich voor. And zij stellen zich voor. So that's to say about himself, I introduce myself. However, it gets tricky when you say about someone else, that's presenting someone else to another group of persons. That's, I hope you still know where we're standing here. But then you would say, hij stelt hem voor. Hij is he, presents him to a group of persons. So then you don't use zich because it's not about the person himself. He's presenting someone else to another group. Same goes for hij stelt haar voor. For example, he presents her to his parents. Then he's presenting her, not himself. So it would be weird to introduce himself to his own parents. That would be strange. He has to introduce someone else. So remember the personal pronouns. Study well that list. It's used quite frequently. I'm sure you've seen as well that je is the same as je. So, jij stelt je voor. That's, that's another use of je. And jullie is as well the same as jullie. So, jullie stellen jullie voor. That can be a little bit confusing, but don't get confused by that. It's just the personal pronoun. And remember as well the reflexive verbs that you have to use those pronouns except for the third person where it becomes zich. One last remark. In the imperative, which we've talked about in the previous section, we've seen that laten we, that's with we. For example, laten we daar wonen. Let's live there. However, the imperative remains we. So don't make the mistake there that you would say let's, that's short for let us. So we have to use laten ons. But no. Laten ons, that's not Dutch. Nu gaan we oefeningen maken. I hope you're as enthusiastic as me to see the new vocabulary. So let's start with this one. Haar is her. De stad is the city. Het plan is the plan. De reis is a travel or trip. Het huis is house or home. Voorstellen is to present. Mind as well that the voor is split up from stellen, just like invullen. Zich voorstellen is to introduce someone. Begrijpen is to understand. Verstaan is to understand as well. Mooi is beautiful. Groot is big. Het antwoord is a response or an answer. Klein is small. Me, mij is me. Je, jou is you. Ons means us. Jullie means you. Mogen, that's to be allowed to. So the conjugation is ik mag, jij mag, hij mag, en dan wij, jullie, zij mogen. Vergeten, that's to forget. And hen means them. In deze lessenreeks gaan we luisteren naar 2 dialogen of gesprekken. So, luisteren naar is listening to, that's the fixed preposition there, so it's always luisteren naar, to someone, luisteren naar iemand, luisteren naar Pieter, listen to Pieter, that's always the same. En dialogen, that's dialogues, gesprekken, we've already seen, that's conversations. In de eerste dialoog gaan we zien hoe we naar een taxi vragen. De tweede dialoog is in het station. Vragen naar, that's the same as luisteren naar, asking after something or asking about something. It's always vragen naar. En taxi, that's a taxi. Tweede, that's second. 2 is to, and tweede is second. Station, that's the train station. Station is always for trains. Daarna doen we een video-oefening waar jullie op enkele vragen zullen moeten antwoorden. Video-oefening, that's video exercise, it's just a combination. En antwoorden op, that's to answer on or answer to, that's the same as vragen naar en luisteren naar, fixed prepositions. Maar eerst zien we de woordenschat voor al deze oefeningen. All these exercises. So first we're going to see a dialogue, then some questions. You'll still have access to the dialogue. Then we're going to see the dialogue again translated, so twice, and then there will be a quiz with the video exercise. It's some regional news, so there will be other persons talking than me, and that's good because then you will be more able to listening to other persons saying certain things. So, we'll start the vocabulary by counting. We beginnen de woordenschat met de nummers 1 tot en met 10. So we start the vocabulary by counting from 1 to 10. So that's literally van 1 tot en met 10, from 1 until 10, but 10 included. So let's start this very long list of words to prepare you for the dialogues with the counting to 10. So we've already seen 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we'll add 7, 8, 9 en 10. De dialogue, de taxi, that's a taxi, tweede, that's second, you recognize there twee. Het station, that's the train station. It's always a train station, even though there's no train in het station. De video, that's video. Antwoorden, that's to answer. Antwoorden op, that's to answer on or to. Het bedrijf, that's a company. De brug, that's a bridge. De bus, that's a bus. Het fietspad, that's the road for the bicycles. Gevaarlijk, that's dangerous. Schilderen, that's to paint. Helpen, that's to help. Zou or zouden in the plural. Zou is for the single, so it's ik, jij, hij, zou. And the rest zouden, that's would. There's no infinitive for that either in English, to my knowledge. Van, naar, that's from, to. Thuis, that's at home. It's a combination of te and huis, and then it becomes at home. Te is not used normally for this purpose anymore, only older persons use that. Hoeveel is how much. De minuut is a minute. De opera is the opera. Het adres, that's the address, single D, single S. De straat is a street. Wensen is to wish or to desire, and it's also used by persons serving customers. If you wish something else, it's a little softer than in English, so you can use it if you're serving a client. Wenst u nog iets? Do you wish something else? Inderdaad, that's indeed. Laat is late. Ophalen is to pick up. It splits up between op and halen. Ik haal op, for example. Om x uur, it's at o'clock. Vanavond is tonight. De naam is a name. In orde is arranged. Komt in orde is will be arranged. It's an expression. De fiets is a bicycle. De school is a school. Dicht is close. Het kind, de kinderen, that's a special plural there. That's child, children. De weg is a road. Bedankt, or dank u, dank je, or dank u wel, is thanks. Graag gedaan is you're welcome, is an expression, just as in English. Graag means with pleasure. Cash means cash, paying cash. Nodig zijn, that's to be needed. So it's the object. If something is needed, you say, for example, the house is needed. Het huis is nodig. So that's the object of being needed. That's in the subject. As you see it there in the example. Het huis is nodig. The house is necessary. The house is needed. Het ticket or het biljet is the ticket. De luchthaven, that's the airport. Retour is return ticket. Enkel is a single ticket. De bank is a bank. De kaart is a card. De bankkaart is the bank card, combination of bank and card is bankkaart. Betalen is to pay. Ja hoor is yes, sure. It's an expression. Even is a moment. Wachten is to wait. Well is well, but not as a noun, well, no, just well. Rijden is to drive. Soms is sometimes. Vallen is to fall. De ouder is a parent. Usually it's in the plural and then it's ouders, parent. Als means if or when it's the sense of if in time. So when the person goes, if you can replace it by if the person goes, then it's your turn. For example, then you could use als. De trein, that's a train. Binnen is inside or within. Verder, that's further. De klant is a client. And vertrekken is to leave. Let's start with the dialogues now. Met taxibedrijf EXO, hoe kan ik u helpen? Ik zou van thuis naar de opera moeten. Wat is uw adres, alstublieft? Potstraat 7 in Deurne. En u wenst naar het operahuis op de Meer te gaan? Ja, inderdaad. En hoe laat mag de taxi u komen ophalen? Om 8 uur vanavond. En uw naam is? Pieter de Dekker. Komt in orde. Om 8 uur komt de taxi. Bedankt en goede namiddag. Graag gedaan. Dag, meneer de Dekker. So let's see the translation for the dialogue. It's met taxibedrijf EXO, hoe kan ik u helpen? That means with taxi company EXO, how can I help you? Ik zou van thuis naar de opera moeten. I would like to go from home to the opera. Wat is uw adres alstublieft? What's your address, please? Potstraat 7 in Deurne, that's Street of the Pot, 7 in Deurne, that's a city in Belgium. En u wenst naar het operahuis op de Meer te gaan? And you would like to go to the opera house on the Meer, that's a street in Antwerp. Ja, inderdaad. Yes, sure. Or indeed. En hoe laat mag de taxi u komen ophalen? And how late can the taxi pick you up? Om 8 uur vanavond. That's at 8 o'clock this evening. En uw naam is, and your name is, Pieter de Dekker. That's a name. Komt in orde. Everything fine. Om 8 uur komt de taxi. At 8 o'clock the taxi comes. Bedankt en goede namiddag. That's thank you and good afternoon. Graag gedaan. Dag meneer de Dekker. That's you're welcome by Mr. de Dekker. Goedemorgen. Een ticket naar de luchthaven, alstublieft. Enkel of retour? Enkel, alstublieft. Dat is dan 10 euro, alstublieft. Kan ik met mijn bankkaart betalen? Ja hoor. Even wachten. Hier. Zo. Dank u wel. Hier is uw biljet. Er is een trein binnen 9 minuten. Bedankt. Nog een prettige dag verder. So let's see the dialogue again with translations. Goedemorgen, een ticket naar de luchthaven alstublieft. That's good morning, a ticket to the airport please. Enkel of retour, that's single or return. Enkel alstublieft, that's single please. Dat is dan 10 euro alstublieft. That is then 10 euro please. Or, well, that's 10 euro please. Kan ik met mijn bankkaart betalen? That's, can I pay with my bank card or any other card? Ja hoor, even wachten. Hier. Yes, yes, sure. Just wait a little bit. Here. Zo. Zo. Dan dank u wel. Hier is uw biljet. Er is een trein binnen 9 minuten. Thank you. Here is your ticket. There's a train within 9 minutes. Thanks. Have a nice day further. Nog een prettige dag verder. Bedankt. Hallo, we beginnen de lessenreeks met een paar uitdrukkingen. Beginnen, that's to start. Een paar, that's a couple, or if it's in a combination with a noun, a couple of, as in this case. Uitdrukking, that's the noun, that's an expression. Uit is out, and pression is druk, so it's a combination, uitdrukking. So that's an expression. In dezelfde les, dus in deze les, zien we een paar woorden van die uitdrukkingen. So we'll see a few words of this expression, a little bit of vocabulary. Never hurts, right, in Dutch. In les 2 doen we een paar vertaaloefeningen en er is geen quiz op het einde. Vertaaloefeningen, vertalen, you know, translate, oefeningen, exercises. So that's a translation exercise, a few translation exercises, because we saw a lot of vocabulary before. And there is no quiz at the end. Het einde, that's the end. You recognize there. Eindigen, that's the verb to end. So het einde is the end. Uitdrukkingen mag je vergeten, maar leer de woordenschat wel. You can forget the expressions, but do learn the vocabulary that we'll see in this lecture. Well, that's another meaning for the word. It's when you want to oppose something negative. So, for example, You don't have to study the expressions, but you have to study the vocabulary. In this case, then you could use well. It's not really translated, it just accentuates the sentence that you have to do something positive. It's as well if you have to say yes to a little kid and that kid says nee, nee, nee. And then you can switch from ja to jawel. So that makes it a little bit stronger. Yes, you do have to brush your teeth or some other matter that you have to attend with your children. Maar nu de eerste uitdrukking. So now let's see the first expression. Again, you don't have to study the expressions. They're just for fun. If you want to surprise a colleague or someone who speaks Dutch, it's always great to surprise that person with a nice Dutch expression. So the first one here. Als de kat van huis is, dansen de muizen op tafel. Kat means cat. Van huis zijn. That means to be away from home. Van huis, from home. And zijn, that's to be. Dansen, that's to dance. And de muizen, that's the plural of the muis. And the muis, that's a mouse. So, when the cat is from home, the mice dance on the table. It's really a weird expression if you don't know, what it means. But it means that when someone of authority is not there, then the persons that are supposed to behave a little bit under that person's authority, they will do things that they shouldn't do. For example, when you're a parent and you leave your kids at home and then they start eating chocolate and doing everything they don't need to, or when you're at work and your boss is on vacation for 1 or 2 weeks or a day, then your colleagues, they start to stop working and then they start to drink a lot, they start to party a lot, they start to flirt, they start to do everything they shouldn't do at work. And then you could say, als de kat van huis is, dan dansen de muizen op tafel. Volgende uitdrukking. Volgende, that's next. Vorige, that's the one before, so previous. So volgende uitdrukking, let's see the next expression. Nu komt de aap uit de mouw. Aap means monkey, and mouw means sleeve. So now the monkey comes out of the sleeve. I mean, where do they get these expressions? The monkey comes out of the sleeve. Well, let me illustrate it to you with an example. For example, when someone you don't really know asks you out for a drink, and you're like, oh, okay, let's have a drink together. And then at the end of the drink, at the end of the evening, that person says, well, I don't have any money to pay. Would you be able to pay it? Then you're like, nu komt de aap uit de mouw. I have to pay, and I didn't know I had to pay. So it's a little bit that. It's when you realize that a project that you started and it wasn't really what it seemed, and that you got a bit, tricked into that project. And then, well, on the moment that you discover that there's something wrong about that project, then you say, nu komt de aap uit de mouw. The monkey comes out of the sleeve. Now, volgende uitdrukking. Niets aan de hand. Hand, that's hand. Very similar to English. Niets aan de hand means, well, there's nothing on the hand. So it's used to say that everything is fine, everything is okay. Because before you thought that something was not okay. For example, if you're walking in the street and then you hear shouts from people, and then you go there, you think that there's maybe a zombie attack or an alien attack from outer space, and when you arrive there, there's 2 people, and then they say like, oh no, everything's okay, we just thought we hurt each other, but it's okay, we didn't hurt each other. So then they could say niets aan de hand, and then you could ask alles goed met jullie or alles goed met jou. That means everything okay with you. Alles is everything. So alles goed met jou is everything okay with you. And then the person could answer, well, alles goed. Or alles in orde. That's also an expression. Everything in order or everything arranged, as we've seen. In orde can also mean in order. So, alles in orde. That's something good to hear. Volgende uitdrukking, van een vlieg een olifant maken. Een vlieg, that's a fly, and an olifant, that's an elephant, so that means to make an elephant out of a fly. And that's to use when someone exaggerates. For example, you're playing football or soccer, if you're in America, and someone, when that person barely gets touched, falls down and starts shouting and making a lot of fuss and rolling around on the ground to get the referee to think that it was really a very bad foul. Then you can say, hij maakt van een vlieg een olifant. He exaggerates a lot. De volgende uitdrukking is een kat in de zak kopen. Kat, you remember that's a cat from the mice that were dancing on the table. De zak means a bag, and kopen, that means to buy. So, to buy a cat in a bag. That's really strange again. To buy a cat in a bag means that you buy something or you do something without carefully checking, well, what did I buy or do? So, for example, if you go to the bookshop in your neighborhood and you buy some Dutch books, and you quickly buy them, and then you're in a hurry, you buy them and you go home, and then you realize at home, well, actually these are German books, and then you can use this expression, een kat in de zak kopen. It's because you didn't really check which language it was. En nu een paar woorden van de woordenschat. Here's the vocabulary. Let's start with this one. De kat, that's a cat. De muis, that's a mouse. Dansen, that's to dance. De zak, that's a bag. Het einde, that's the end. De vorige, that's the previous. De aap, that's a monkey. De mouw, that's a sleeve. De hand, that's a hand. Beginnen, that's to start. Volgende is next. Alles is everything. De olifant is an elephant. De vlieg is a fly. Kopen is to buy. Het paar is a couple. Jawel is yes, but a little bit stronger than yes. That's why there's an exclamation mark. And de oplossing, that's solution. Hallo, dit is lessenreeks nummer 12. De vorige is 11, so 12, that's 12. 11 is 11. Omdat er 12 uren in een halve dag zijn, zien we in deze lessenreeks de tijd. That's quite a sentence. Omdat, important, because, that means because, so you can start a lot of sentences with omdat, and you recognize there om is more or less the same. Uren, that's hours, uren. En een halve, that's half a day. So, because there's 12 hours and half a day, we're going to see the time. So that's just an excuse to see the time. Anyway, next phrase. In de eerste les zullen we zien hoe we de tijd zeggen in het Nederlands. We're going to see how to tell the time in Dutch. In de tweede les zien we de dagen van de week, de maanden en de seizoenen van het jaar. So the days, months and seasons of the year in lesson 2. In les 3 zijn er oefeningen en op het einde de quiz. Het einde, the end. Nu, eerst de nummers. Die zijn nodig voor tijd te zeggen. Voor, if you use it with an infinitive, you have to use te. It's like om te. En voor te, voor tijd te zeggen. Then you have to use te in between. So we're going to see 13 to 20, which are necessary for telling the time. So 13 to 20 is these ones. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. You see there from 15 on that it's just a combination of 5 and 10. 15, so that's 15. And then 16, 16. So that's how you can remember the numbers. Dus, hoe vraag je aan iemand de tijd? How do you ask someone the time? Hoe laat is het? How late is it? Je kan antwoorden met bijvoorbeeld, that's for examples. Je kan antwoorden bijvoorbeeld met het is 2 uur. It's 2 o'clock. Or 7:15. Het is 7:15. 8:15. Or het is 8:30. It's 8:30. So beware there that you use 9 and not 8. That's a little bit confusing there. The Dutch say 8:30. They mean 8:30, not 9:30. So don't get confused there. It's 8:30 to say 8:30. 8:45, that's 8:45. And remember there that kwart is short for een kwartier. Een kwartier, that's a quarter of an hour. That's a 8:45. If it gets a little bit more complicated, then it's 8:55. Het is 8:55. So the next one is het is 8:06. That's 8:24. That's quite a difficult way to say 8:24. It's 8:24. So you take 8:30, 8:30, and then you subtract this these 6 minutes from the 8:30, 8:30. Another one, 8:43. That's het is 7:17. It's 17 to 9. That's 8:43. Dus, zo zeggen we de tijd in het Nederlands. That's how we say time in Dutch. One more important remark. If you want to say in the morning, in the evening, you use this one. 's morgens, 's middags, 's avonds, 's nachts. That's a fixed expression somehow. So in the morning, in the noon, around noon, in the evening, in the night, or during the night, that's also a translation. And it comes from a very old case. And cases are something that exists in German, in Latin, in Greek. It's kind of a conjugation of a word. So these words, they come from des morgens. Well, dat mag je vergeten. You can forget that. It's not so important. But so you know that it comes from a case from a long time ago. However, what you do have to remember is that if it's in the beginning of a sentence, and these words are quite often in the sentence because you start, in the morning I did this, in the morning I do that, in the evening I do that, then the capital is not with the S, it's with the letter that comes afterwards. So for example, 's'avonds gaan we uit, in the evening we're going out. You see there, A, S, A, it's the A that's in the capital, not the S. So mind that as well. And uitgaan, that's to go out. That's literal translation. Uit plus gaan is to go out. Uitgaan. And then it splits up like many other verbs, like voorstellen en invullen. En nu, de dagen van de week de maanden en de seizoenen van het jaar. The days of the week, the months, and the seasons of the year. Seasons in the year. So the days of the week, well, what are they? Wat zijn de dagen van de week? Wel, hier zijn ze. Maandag, dinsdag, woensdag, donderdag, vrijdag, zaterdag, zondag. To say on a specific day in this list of days, then you say op, for example, op maandag or op dinsdag. You don't say aan maandag. Don't do that. That's wrong. So wrong. And actually, these days are very similar to English. So, zondag, it's Sunday, and zon in Dutch, that means the sun. So the zon, that's Sunday. So it's combination, just like in English. Maandag as well. Maan and dag. Maan is the moon, like Monday somehow, and then dag again, day. And maan is also used to form the word maand. Maand is a month, and you know that the moon somehow circles around the earth, and that takes more or less a month to travel around the earth. So that's how you can remember maandag, maand, and maan. It's all connected. Note, however, that the days of the week are not in capitals, so no capitals in the first letter. Don't do it, except of course if it's in the beginning of a sentence. If you say maandag ga ik werken, Monday I'm going to work, well, then you use maandag with a capital. But now the months also no capitals. That's Januari, Februari, Maart, April, Mei, Juni, Juli, Augustus, September, October, November, December. So that's the 12 months of the year. Also, again, quite similar to English. To say in January or in February or any other month of this list, then you say the same way in January, in February. To say specific dates, for example, Monday the 1st of January. The easiest way is just to use maandag 1 januari. That's the most simple. However, the Dutch sometimes complicate things as well when they're writing letters. They think, we have to make it a little bit more complicated because it's a letter. But this increases the danger, het is gevaarlijk, it's dangerous, it increases the danger of making a mistake because then some other rules apply and that you have to take into account. So you could, when you hear something, you could understand what that person says. Het is maandag de 1 januari instead of maandag 1 januari. And it goes on as well, dinsdag de 2 januari. That would go on and on and on. But the easiest way is to say dinsdag 2 januari. So that then you're not going to make mistakes as well when you're writing letters. En nu de seizoenen, om deze les te eindigen. De seizoenen zijn de lente, that's spring, de zomer, that's summer. You recognize a little bit zon in it. And it's somehow similar to summer. Zomer, summer. De herfst, that's autumn. And then the winter, that's surprisingly winter. Winter, with the British pronunciation. One last thing, herfst is one of those words that have so many consonants, herfst, and that's a little bit difficult to pronounce. And by the way, the noun with the most consonants in one row is based on herfst. It's herfstschrijver. That means someone who writes in autumn. There are some people that only write in autumn for some reason, and then you would use herfstschrijver. So that's 1, 2, 3. Well, I'm not going to count that. There's way too many consonants. You can forget that. Dat mag je vergeten. No problem. But remember, schrijven, that's the verb to write. That's quite an important verb. So schrijven is to write. But the herfstschrijver, leave that to the language specialists. So let's see some more vocabulary. Here is the first one. Omdat is because. Half is half. Het uur is an hour. However, in the plural, it's important to know that you don't need to put uren. You can put it, but some people don't put the plural. They say 2 uur, 3 uur, 4 uur, and so on. And it's the same for year, jaar. So that's also 2 jaar, and so on. Het kwartier, that's a quarter of an hour. Or even a quarter in a city. But that's very advanced Dutch. De week is a week. Let's count them all together here. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So that's from 11 to 20. Let's read them all together again. Maandag, dinsdag, woensdag, donderdag, vrijdag, zaterdag, zondag. So that's the days of the week from Monday on. So these are the months of the year, starting from January, Januari, Februari, Maart, April, Mei, Juni, Juli, Augustus, September, Oktober, November, December. So that's the 4 seasons, de winter, de zomer, de lente, de herfst. So that's winter, summer, spring, and autumn. De maand, that's a month. Het seizoen, that's a season. Bijvoorbeeld, that's for example, you recognize there, voorbeeld. Uitgaan, that's to go out, it splits up, so it's ik ga uit. De maan, that's the moon. De zon, that's the sun. Schrijven, that's to write. And to write on is schrijven op. Laten we de bezittelijke woorden in deze lessenreeks zien. Bezittelijke woorden, dat mag je vergeten. Het is possessive words in het Engels. We beginnen met van en s. Les 2 gaat over de bezittelijke voornaamwoorden. Bezittelijke voornaamwoorden, dat mag je ook vergeten. You can forget that. It's possessive pronouns in het Engels. Daarna doen we een paar oefeningen en is er de quiz om te eindigen. So, the first way to indicate the possessive, and the easiest way as well, is just to use van, which means of or from. For example, het boek van Jan, or het eerste seizoen van het jaar. Do you remember which is the first season of the year? From the previous section, van de vorige lessenreeks. I'm sure you remember that it's the winter. I think that's the first season of the year, I guess. Well, it starts before, but anyway, it's not about the seasons. Het eerste seizoen van het jaar, so that's the first seasons of the year. However, for proper names, you can recognize those by the capital. The first letter of the word is a capital. For example, Jan, or any other given name. So that's a proper name. For the proper names, this sounds a little bit weird in Dutch. So, het boek van Jan, that's like, is that person well Dutch speaking? Kan die Nederlands spreken? So you want to avoid that effect. So you can avoid that effect by using the S instead of the van. So then it becomes, just as in English, Jan's boek. So that's, again, the book of Jan, Jan, his book. But you remark there that there is no apostrophe behind Jan. In English, there is an apostrophe. John's book, there's an apostrophe. And that's very normal. There is no apostrophe except for those proper names, so the ones starting with a capital, for those proper names that end with a vowel, except for E. So, for example, to make it clear, Sarah's auto. That's Sarah's car, and you see there the apostrophe there appearing, like in English. However, if it ends with an E, then there is no apostrophe. For example, Hanne, bijvoorbeeld Hanne, Hanne's auto. So that's the car of Hanne, Hanne's car. Remember that this is only for proper names, not for other names like jaar or seizoen or auto, the car's door. Then you wouldn't be able to use this S. So it's only for proper names. And then we're going to make it a little bit more complicated. Hannes, that's a male name, ends with an S. And words with an S, proper names with an S, in the possessive, just add the apostrophe, just like in English. Jesus, friends, or any other names, friends. You would only put an apostrophe there, just the same as in Dutch, but you see there Hannes auto and Hannes auto there on the board there. And it's very important whether you put an apostrophe or not, because if you put an apostrophe, it's the guy's car. If you don't put an apostrophe, it's the girl's car. And, it kind of matters whose car it is, because you can't just give cars away just based on this. So pay attention to that. En nu de bezittelijke voornaamwoorden. Well, what's that? Well, that's just possessive pronouns. Dat mag je vergeten, hè? You already know that. What are the possessive pronouns in Dutch? Well, we've already seen quite a few of them, but let's put them on the board. So that's mijn, jou or je, that's my, and then your in the informal way for single. Zijn, that's his. Haar is her. Ons or onze is our. Jullie is your in the plural informally. And hun is their. And u, that's the polite form with a W at the end. Now, there's 6 remarks to make about that list. So let's start with the first one. Het words use zijn. So to translate its, for example, its book, then you would say zijn boek, not its, huts or something like that. No, zijn boek. Second remark, ons and onze. Ons is used only for het words in the single. In the other cases, so de or in the plural, then you use onze. So it's similar to the adjectives. I'm sure you remember that. So the third remark, hun and hen, don't confuse them. Hen, we've seen, is them, and hun, that is their. Even Dutch-speaking persons make mistakes against this. So if you can do it without mistakes, you're great. You're incredible. Number 4, mijn and zijn, they can also be written as m or zn. So that's perfectly normal in the spoken language as well as in the written language. Remark number 5 is about jullie. If you translate, do you have your car, for the plural informally, that's hebben jullie auto. And that sounds a little bit weird, having jullie auto, there's twice jullie. So, in that case, the second jullie is replaced by je. So, remember that. And then the last remark is about the je, except for jullie je. Je has three functions, and we've seen them all, but let's recapitulate a bit, because memory is not always optimally working. So in this sentence, je stelt je voor aan je collega's. You have the three functions. The first function is je as a subject, the second function is je as an object, and the third function is, as we've just seen, the possessive use of je. You can change the sentence and then it becomes more clear. Jij stelt jou voor aan jouw collega's. So that's how Dutch persons would try to figure out which je is what. We haven't seen much vocabulary in this lecture, so let's just put them on the board. That's het boek, de boek. Hun is there, and de collega, that's the colleague, as you might have guessed. De lessenreeks eindigt met deze les. Oh, well, I really hope you learned a lot from this course. I hope you practiced a lot from this course and that you will practice a lot for this course. So you'll have always access to this course. So if you think I didn't understand something, you can always check back as well in the free ebook. I'm leaving you with 3 presents. The first present is a link to my ebook with over 100 tips to learn any language. It can be useful to learn Dutch. The second is a discount to my other courses, so you will find those links in the next lecture, they're all there. And the third is also in the next lecture. There's links to learn more Dutch. So for example, a link to the television channels and so on. You can do 3 things for me. First one is to write a review for this course. Think, how was it? Was it good? Was it really bad? Not. And then put it in a review. You can do so by clicking on my courses, and then you click on the course of this course, and then you click on the stars. So there you will find it, and you should be seeing it right now. Second, if you want to go more in depth, you can fill in my anonymous survey. Link is in the next lecture. That would be really great for me to know what you liked, what you didn't like, and you can also give more comments anonymously. So if you want to, to say something that you can't just put in a message, you can put it there. And the third thing you can do for me is just to spread the word about this course for people who are just like you learning Dutch. That would be great. To prove you that learning languages can be quite difficult, but that teaching can be even more difficult, I included a video of bloopers after that lecture, so if you need to know what are all the things that I did wrong while making this course, I did many more things wrong, but there you can see some of them. And if I can leave you with something, that's one big advice when you're learning a language. The most important is to talk, to write, to listen, and to read in that order. So talking is the best way to learn a language. Writing is as well a really great way, and then listening and then reading. But, as you prefer it. So, tot ziens! So, meneer, that's Mr. Mevrouw is. Mevrouw is. Mevrouw is Mrs. One little thing before we start exercises. Om and door use te with an infinitive. So that's in order to jump, or by learning and talking a lot. By learning and talking a lot. So one little thing before we start the exercises. Two more remarks before we Two more remarks before we start the exercises. Two more remarks before we start. Two more remarks before we see some negative words. In this lecture, we're going to talk about demonstrative pronouns like that, which. In this lecture, we're going to talk about dat, die. In this lecture, we're going to talk about that, these, those, which, who. For example, tijd, we've already seen, that's time. Or Jack, who visited me last week, was painting his ceiling. Who visited last week, that's about Jack, and visited Jack. Another example, Jack, who visited me last week,